I'd like to call to order the Winthrop Town Council meeting for November 1st, 2022, 6 p.m. to Leo Senior Center. Denise, can you call the meeting to order and say the roll, please?
Council Honan? Here. Council Fusillo?
Here.
Council Munson?
Here.
Council Belcher?
Here.
Council DeMarco?
Here.
Council Flockhart? Here. Council Aiello?
Here.
Vice President Ruggiero?
Yeah.
President Lettieri?
Here.
Thank you.
I'd like everybody to stand for the pledge, led by Councilor Flockhart.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have circulated the meeting minutes from October 18th. Everyone has had the opportunity to look them over. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilor DeMarco, second by Councilor Fusillo. Any questions, additions, deletions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. General information recommendations. We've had a lot of emails, complaints about defamation of the sign, the DCR sign, beginning of the beach. And we're lucky enough here tonight to have DCR Representative State Trooper Lieutenant Bossy, and we thank him for taking the time out of his day to come here and just to give us an update on that situation. Lieutenant, if you could go up to the microphone. Yes, thank you.
Mic on? I don't think it is. I just want to hit that.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Donald Bossy. I'm the State Police Lieutenant commanding the Revere State Police Barracks. As part of my jurisdiction, we cover Winthrop Shore Drive, Winthrop Beach, in addition to East Boston, Revere Beach, the Linway, Nahant Beach, and Route 1. The reason I'm here tonight in particular is there were some issues regarding vandalism. And I wanted to address the council just to let you know that there were some questions, there were some emails back and forth questioning what we were doing. Chief Delahanty and I were first made aware of the incidents after, I believe, the second or third event. The first two times DCR addressed it, fixed the vandalism. It was the third time that they let us know that it had happened. Following that, we began an investigation. Without getting into the specifics of the investigation, we identified a person initially by sight. Ultimately, it took us a little while longer to get a positive identification on him. Last week, the subject was brought in to the State Police Barracks in Revere, where Trooper Christopher Kane interviewed him, and he admitted to all of the acts of vandalism. Criminal charges are being sought against him. Just so you know, he's a 62-year-old male with no prior criminal history. I don't have an explanation for the council as to why he did it. He did not expound on why he did it, but he did take full responsibility for each and every occasion. But I do want to stress that during the course of the investigation, there were several emails questioning what was being done, why people weren't being updated. And I'm sure Chief Delahanty would agree with me that as part of a criminal investigation, we tend to keep things close to the vest. Mm-hmm. I've been on the state police for 30 years. I spent 20 of that as a fire and explosion investigator. I have worked on multiple investigations. Generally, the only people that I brief when an investigation is going on are my superiors. Even in the incidents of local things, I'll talk to the local police chief, the local detectives, but we ask that it doesn't go any further than that. It's not that we don't trust the people within the town, but we never know who's listening. So I just want to assure everybody that from the get-go, we were actively investigating, even when it seemed like it wasn't. I'm also very fortunate, and I would like to stress that in my 2 years as a station commander, I've had great relationships within the communities, but I'm very fortunate in that Chief Delahanty and I, before I became the station commander in Revere, we've had a friendship going back many years, both professionally as well as off the job, to the point where we're actually, even though it doesn't show, we are workout partners. It doesn't show on me, obviously. If there are any issues within the DCR state properties or even within the town itself, I'm always available. Chief Delahanty has my phone, Officer Goodwin. Detective Carter actually happens to be a neighbor of mine. And I'm always available to assist the town of Winthrop, all of your constituents, in whether it's on state property or not. We're available to help in any way. But I just wanted to really reassure the town that we were on it from the get-go, whether it appeared it or not, and I'm very happy that this has come to a very successful resolution. I'd field any questions if you happen to have
Do you have
any.
any questions?
Just one.
Councilor DeMarco.
And you might not be able to answer this, Lieutenant or Chief. Was it a Winthrop resident?
It was not.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and I will say that we have asked, we're still requesting DCR come before as a representative, so we still have questions on access to the beach, especially up by Locust Street. There was an incident where a ladder's been taken away by DCR, and we're hoping that for next season that will be replaced, and we just want to maintain proper access to the beach. We thank you so much for your service, and we thank you for coming here, and if there's anything, we know you're around if we need anything, and we appreciate that.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Thank you.
President, if I could just,
Yes.
With this follow-up from Lieutenant again, just want to shout out to Deputy Chief Goodwin and Detective Carter, who really spent a lot of time, as well as other detectives. This is an early morning investigation. It's not always easy to get people up at 3 in the morning to go out and do the hard work. So I just want to make sure that we mentioned, again, reiterate the lieutenant's comments earlier. We always enjoy a great relationship with the state police, and we'll continue to do so. Thank you for your support.
Thank you. Public hearings, we have a few this evening. We will take them a little out of order just so we could spend more time on the ORC. The first public hearing is to vote to transfer, is a solid waste enterprise fund amendment for $100,000. I will open that public hearing, and I will go to Councilor Fusillo first.
Yes, so this motion, we talked about it earlier. The motion reads, in accordance with the charter of the town of Winthrop, I move that the town vote to amend its June 7th, 2022 vote approving the town manager's proposed solid waste enterprise fund budget for fiscal year 2023 by decreasing the amount appropriated for operation and maintenance by $100,000 and reducing funding from retained earnings by $100,000 or take any other action thereto. This was discussed in committee before this meeting, and it is a unanimous positive recommendation.
Okay, and before I open it up to the public, this is more of an accounting issue. This was when the budget was created. The retained earnings wasn't fully realized, so they decreased it as they increased it as they should, and they're reducing the appropriation. It doesn't affect the bottom line of the enterprise fund at all. I will open it up for any comments, positive or negative, from the audience. Yes, and please, any comments throughout tonight, please come to the microphone. I've been asked by WCAT to make sure of that, to make sure that all comments can be heard on WCAT. And please state your name and precinct, as always, for the record.
Todd Sacco, Precinct 2. Do I get to ask questions? Because I have questions.
On this item.
On this, right, yeah.
Yes.
Retained earnings, are those the fees, the trash fees?
Well, it could be anything. It's money that is in the account.
What is it specifically in this case?
It's money left over from the account. It's like any enterprise fund tries to have a retained earnings budget.
Okay.
Well, not a budget, but retained earnings. The state recommends that you have 20% of the fund in retained earnings at some point.
Where is the $100,000 going?
It's not going anywhere. It's staying there.
said that- I
The
thought they were-
appropriation from the town was reduced by $100,000.
Right, that's what I'm asking. That you took out, that was originally appropriated for that line, where's that going?
That is just back in the town's funds. It's
The
not
general budget?
in the general fund.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any questions from the council? Seeing none, we will close that public hearing. We will open up another public hearing to transfer $101,786.04 for the Brightly, or better called School Dude, Facilities Needs Assessment for the town and school buildings. I will again ask Councilor Fusillo to speak on this item first.
Yes, so the The motion reads, I move that the town council vote to appropriate $101,786.04 from the Building Maintenance Stabilization Fund to a new special article line to pay for facilities needs assessment for town and school buildings to be performed by Brightly/School Dude or take any other action thereto. This would leave our Building Maintenance Stabilization Fund after approval at $124,116.27. Once again, we spoke about this in our meeting before this meeting. We feel this is a necessary thing for the town, and it was unanimously approved as a positive recommendation.
And this is a tool that's going to enable us to get a 20-year capital schedule for the town to make sure we're maintaining not only the physical structure of the buildings, but the assets within the buildings, whether it be air conditioning systems or boilers or whatever. Are there any questions from the public on this? I would ask the town manager if he has anything to say on this item. Maybe explain it a little bit more
I
detail.
believe this is a necessary next step. I appreciate the council support if we receive it. And then once we get moving forward, we'll be coming out to do the facility needs assessment on all of our buildings, town and school, which totals about 561,000 square feet, so.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Councilor Aiello?
Thank you. Just a follow-up to the town manager. Tony, do you expect that, let's assume we begin the development of the capital plan in January, just as an assumption, and advance it through to a submission that comes the end of March. Do you expect any data to come from this effort in that short period of time, or will really impact the following year's considerations?
Probably the following years. I think it'll be done before the end of this fiscal year, but probably not before we present the first capital plan. But again, we can always modify that too as we move forward, as we get closer. But the initial capital plan will be generated by me and working with facilities and looking at what we had already in the pipeline.
Yeah, no, it's a great initiative, but any data that we can get. That
Without a doubt, yeah. I'm not going to push them on it, but
Thank
we
you.
just got to, they want to know we can pay them first.
Councilor Munson?
Yes, I was under the understanding that you guys had a follow-up meeting with Brightly School Dude, and I just was with, I believe, you, Mr. Calla, and Rich.
It was a training, actually.
Oh, it was a
It was
training.
a training about asset essentials and how to manage your assets long-term. And it involved not only buildings, but we talked about infrastructure, road repairs, stormwater, water, sewer. So it was actually great training. You walk into those things not sure what to expect, but they did a really nice job with it and talked about the importance of, stressing the needs. And even though, pipes are buried under the ground and people want to forget about them, that, these are really the things we need to pay attention to and, make sure we get the proper funding for them.
So after this first round of assessments should we call them Brightly or School Dude, or?
Brightly is what they want to be called, yeah. Everybody's known them for School Dude for years. Brightly just came about in the last year, so.
Yeah,
it's
School
more of a
Dude seems
transition.
a little bit like it's
Yeah.
too narrow,
Yeah.
too colloquial. But as far as after this initial assessment, is it going to be on them to continue to assess, or is it more of us going forward to be able to assess our own capital assets?
It's for us to assess. We'll have updates for all the equipment, preventative maintenance plans, and then as we, say we get a new boiler, we'll add that boiler, and they'll update the plan for us and go, move forward from there.
So is it going to be an arduous process after they've done their initial assessment to keep up with it? Or is this going to be a pretty intuitive software that's not adding a lot of extra steps?
It's intuitive, but it requires manpower to put the data in, right? I mean, it's only as good as what we put into it, so we've got to make sure we keep up with the inspections and do the, preventive maintenance and update the system and, get the work orders, training the staff with all the department heads to know, like, all right, if I've got an issue in my building, I've got to use this software to put it in, and then we can keep track and allows us to identify problems and see where the, next problems are going to be.
So there'll be more than just one or two people adding input and
No
data?
doubt, it'll be all the department head staff, yeah.
Oh, wonderful. All right, so it'll be pretty, and then there'll be checks and balances as to,
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, well, we, follow up on the work orders, has this been done, has this not been done, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm looking forward to it. Very excited about this. Thank you.
Any other questions? No other comments from the public? Seeing none, we will close that public hearing. There was another advertised public hearing to transfer $247,775 for water main master plan and long-term capital improvement plan. That is going to be continued until the next scheduled meeting. So the last public hearing we will open up is an ordinance review committee recommendations. We will open that public hearing. My thought on this, first of all, just to lay it out, we're looking for as much input from the public as we could possibly get. My plan would be to have another public hearing, the first meeting in December. We would like to have that public hearing. We will ask the schools for their help at the auditorium, which will enable us to have a Zoom capability there, which we don't have here. We didn't think the Harvey would be big enough or comfortable enough for the attendees. So the plan right now would be to have an additional public hearing on 12/6 at the high school, but we just have to, we were trying to have this one at the high school, but the high school is in production mode for, I believe it's The Wizard of Oz coming up soon for a plug for the Winthrop Drama Society, Winthrop High School Drama Club, and so we were unable to use the auditorium tonight. So the plan is to have a second public hearing on December 6th. But we will open up this public hearing, so this is on any comment at all in regards to the recommendations made to the council from the ORC. So that is open. We will first ask, and then we will turn it into a council forum also, but we will ask for public comment or questions first. Anyone from the public wish to be heard on the Ordinance Review Committee? All right, so we don't need to form a line or anything. We'll ask again. All right, we will ask the council. We will open it up to the council. We had a brief discussion on some of these items at a previous meeting. We will continue discussions here and see where that leads us. Is there anyone that has any thoughts on the recommendations made to us on the Ordinance Review Committee? Councilor DeMarco.
So I've stated before that I believe the recommendations should go through the process and go to the state and then eventually get to the voters. That's how the process is supposed to work. One that did not come out of committee with a positive recommendation was the one on the recall motion. I would like to see something put forward because I think it's very important to keep us in check. And I think that's one way to do it, but the bar has to be extremely high. And I think the bar with the original motion was extremely low. So, you know, I'm not going to do it right now, but I would like to see something like, 50% of the last electorate, or the 50% of the voters, if you get 50%, who want to recall somebody, then that should be something we look at. Once again, not doing something today, but, I think that's the most controversial, or at least debated, thing that came out of the ORC. So something to think about. Something to think about.
And just to let everyone know, any recommendations, they will be voted on individually at a time yet to be determined, probably in early January. And there could be any amendments made by a councilor on any one of these motions. There could be a totally separate motion coming from a councilor also. Councilor Munson.
Thank you, Council President. I was just going to ask if I could add on to Councilor DeMarco's comments. I too look forward to having the recall added, but with a much more substantial vote, signature voted. And so, so would the process be to make a motion? One of us would need to make a motion. The next would need to another one would need to second it. And then how does it get to a point where it actually moves on to the state legislature?
We will, when we come in, that's recommendation number 5, basically, and it talks about the addition of recall language. If you were to make a motion to say, you know what, you thought the spirit behind it was well, but you wanted to make the bar that much harder to throw, so we couldn't say, Councilor Munson wears sneakers every meeting, he should be recalled. So make it something substantial and require a pretty deep and intense work effort by that person to get on the floor. So once as that question comes to a vote before us, you would make an amendment. It would be seconded, it would be discussed, the amendment would be voted on, the amendment would be passed, and then we would vote on the recommendation as amended. Once we vote on all those recommendations, the ones that need to go to the state will move on.
Can I ask another question on that same topic? I noticed in other towns and municipalities, there are 3 different numbers that are being presented as possible metrics for this recall thing to go through. One, which is what Rob was saying, is the number of signatures necessary to actually get a recall vote put on a ballot, which he is suggesting 50% of the last vote, which I also think is a fair number. I think it's more than fair. But the other 2 numbers that I've noticed is the number of signatures required to actually pull the papers, meaning to actually get the papers from Denise at the clerk's office, and actually right now it's currently 1, but other towns have anywhere between, so is that a metric we can add to it?
I think you could add any metric you choose. Personally, I think that having, half of the last election is a lot of work, because that number's going to change all the
Right.
time. If it's a presidential election, it's going to be really hard. If it's a regular election, it could be 900 votes.
A fixed
We
number
would
would
have
be
to, you
smarter.
would also have to include language, even though there were questions potentially that would eliminate a precinct council. I think the language should include precinct and at-large, because if that's the way it ends up, then it should include that. And I think it should be, personally, I think it should be much more than what's required for a ballot. To get on a ballot for a precinct that's 50 votes, you should need, and maybe it's 50% of the registered voters in that precinct or something like that, whatever it happens to be. But I think there should either be some sort of set number or easy matrix to go half of the previous election. If you had a snowstorm or something and nobody went out and you had, 200 people vote in precinct 2, now 100 signatures.
Something
So I don't think
simple
it should be based on a previous election. I do think it should be a substantial number, however that's determined by the
The
council.
last metric that I saw in some of these other ones was the actual time from the moment the papers are pulled to the actual date necessary to actually get the required signatures necessary to put it on a ballot. And so the average was somewhere around a month. And that seems fair, but, I mean, at this point, if you're doing something that colossal, is 6 weeks really going to be that much of a deal breaker? So if I had to put numbers out there, based on the numbers so far, I would say, I think you're right, a fixed number makes more sense. That way you're not having to chase this moving target. But I would say the same number of signatures required to pull to pull papers to actually run for a position would be the same number you need to actually pull the papers. And then the required number to actually get it on the ballot would be, half of the lowest vote is around 1,500, half of the highest vote is around 2,300. So I'd say 2,000 would be a fair, easy number to always strive for, and that would certainly surpass, if 2,000 people are willing to sign a document saying this person needs to be recalled, I think that it should get the attention of the people and should definitely be on the ballot. So that's what I would propose, and then I'd say, if you're going that far, make it 6 weeks. Make it, to get enough votes.
And I will say, some of the conversation, which will be vast on this recall provision, becomes somewhat moot if, another question is to reduce the term of a councilor from 4 to 2 years. In a recall provision, you can't pull papers 6 months after the election or 6 months before the next election, which is basically a year. And if the terms are 2 years, it doesn't even give you that much time, because then you're going to spend 3 months of time doing all this stuff, and then you're going to spend an election of 25 grand to, it would be out of office in 4 months after that. So some of the recall language becomes somewhat moot, but you can't depend on that, because if something didn't pass, you'd still want to have the provision. So I think you base it on thinking it's going to be a 4-year cycle.
There's going to be a 4-year term amongst some
And
of
it
the
could be a 4-year
elected
term amongst, it could be, school committee.
Right.
Councilors, council president, whatever it happens to be. But, right, you would base the language on current circumstances and then see what happens.
Council President, is it currently 28 days? Is that the window right now that was proposed for?
To get the required signatures?
Oh, once the signatures are once the
Yeah.
papers are pulled?
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah, it is, within 21 days after filing.
21
yeah.
days.
21?
Yeah.
Seems really hard to pull.
And this says, in the way it's written, it says, a petition would be returned and filed and filed with the town clerk within 28 days after the filing of the affidavit and shall be signed by at least 20% of the voters of the town for any office elected at large and signed by at least 20% of the voters of the precinct if it was for precinct.
Okay.
So that's the way it's written. Or the recommendation is written.
Just to
Yep,
close out my
Councilor Munson,
comments.
sure.
I'm not going to make a motion for any specific numbers so that we can have more time to hear public hearing and so forth, but before we get to a vote, I'm probably going to pass a motion to get those three metrics together. I do love the spirit of the measure. It requires accountability, but you have to make it so hard that it can't be a frivolous recall and defaming someone's reputation.
Okay. Any, Councilor Belcher?
I have kind of a procedural
Sure.
question. Now, we can make amendments to these recommendations, but is there a limit on the scope of these amendments? Because I feel like you can get to a point where then the council is proposing their own charter changes. You know what I mean?
You mean to total, like, give me an example. So for
Like,
example.
so say for the recall one, we
Yep.
fully changed all the metrics. I guess that one's a
Yes,
bad
you do have
example.
the opportunity to do that.
But for, say, recommendation one, could we change, like, all at large to a different number at large? You know what I mean?
You
Like,
could change it to districts, you could change it to, yes.
okay. So there's no point at which it becomes the council's charter change, it's still an
No,
amended
because it's still
version
going
of
to the
committee.
state, and then it's
Okay.
still going, potentially going to the
Right.
town.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Aiello?
A couple of things, just following up on that. So I worry about two things. The first is, just following up on what Hannah was talking about, if we were to find consensus to change something substantially, any item substantially, that would deviate significantly from the spirit of what came out of the review commission that was appointed, as well as the hearings and ordinance. Are we treating people fairly in those processes fairly by taking a unilateral action? If that's clearly allowable in the charter, that's certainly one thing, but there's also a question about asking a bunch of citizens to recommend something and then unilaterally changing that. And I just think we need to think about that and be careful, because such deviation could be viewed as sort of a flipping or alternately of what the original intent of that group is. So I just worry about making sure we have appropriate consultation with those groups that originated this stuff. That would be,
And I think, just to ask that, and then you
Yeah.
can finish, but I think you're absolutely right on that. I have asked Denise also to send emails to the past charter commissioners to have them available in case they would like to add anything. This would be the 4th, and there have never been significant, now, I'm not saying it's a perfect document, but I wouldn't expect that you're going to have a council make some sort of significant change that, and I would, again, that would still need 6 votes from the council before it was to move forward to the state. So I think the spirit of what you're saying is 100% true. I think you're asking a subcommittee to do work for however long it was, almost 6 months. You would expect to take what they thought very seriously and then made slight additions, deletions, or voted it up or down on your own merits. But I wouldn't expect to see major changes or, totally new items coming up. It is within the purview, but I wouldn't expect that. Or think that it would be passed, probably.
okay. Yeah, it's a function of degree, and
Right.
I think we just got to be careful about it. So that leads to my second question. I want to make sure that what we're doing is absolutely consistent with the requirements of the charter, and I have previously asked for an executive session. This topic is an example of, I think, what would be helpful in an executive session, to have the guidance of the attorneys to tell us how far of a deviation, is there a test that we should impose on ourselves for how far of a deviation we can, we've got the ability to unilaterally take. And secondly, I want to make sure, thank you for the most recent outside counsel opinion on where we stand with respect to the process, but I found it internally confusing in terms of their thought processes, not allowed to talk about it because it's attorney-client privilege. They also refer back to a January 3rd, 2022 opinion, which was not attached to that opinion. So I think the council would benefit if in the next meeting we could have an executive session and just sort of clarify, make sure we're on solid grounds legally to continue this process so that somebody doesn't challenge us after all this work. And then second, to just provide us some guidance about any amendments and how far we can go and how we should restrict ourselves. So if we
Okay,
could do that
and
the
just
next
to answer
meeting, that
those
would
two,
be great.
which, thank you again for those questions. So I will ask for and forward it to everyone, an opinion on, because I think it's a good question anyway, on the deviation as to, what would say, hey, you've overstepped your bounds or whatever in making a change or a suggestion. I did ask, because of a question you had asked before, on executive sessions, and was told, and I could get this also in writing if you wish, I was told that I asked two separate things. Could we have an executive session, which I kind of knew the answer, can we have an executive session to discuss the changes proposed and made, and I was told no, and then I said, could we have a discussion, an executive session on the legalization of the legal properties, which we've been told multiple times that it's okay, and I was told no, and I could get written opinions on that too. But I have not asked on deviations to the extent that a counselor or council as a whole can amend, change, or add an item. So I will get that for you, and I will get everything else in writing for you.
Yeah, I find it confusing that an attorney would say that an executive session to explain their written opinion, that they would find that they cannot do that legally.
I think he meant, and again, just to answer you, he didn't say he couldn't tell the council, he just said it could not be an executive, it would have to be in an open meeting. It doesn't fall
But
under
then we have
any
to,
of the...
but then we have to, how do we do that and not talk about the content of the opinion? That's the problem, right? My question is the content of the opinion. If we start doing that in open session, then you have to release the original opinion. So I'm happy either way, but
Okay.
they go together, either both an
I
executive.
know it can't, well,
Because one's
again,
protected right now, so either everything's protected discussions, which I would understand, or everything is open discussion, but you can't have an open discussion over a protected document without revealing the protected document, right? So
I will get
if they
more
could clarify that,
clarification.
that would be great. I think
They will. Thank you.
Need something that's consistent.
Anyone else on any of these recommendations, multiple recommendations? Counselor Belcher.
Thank you. Just another procedural thing. Do these all need to be voted on and passed together, or could we move some,
Well, they're all going to be done separately. What do you mean?
like, when we go to vote on recommendation 1 through 13, are we voting on them all on the same night, or can we, because some of them seem a little simpler, or a little more simple?
I think we'll take them in order if it takes us multiple meetings, or we might just have a special meeting to vote on this. But I mean, I think the goal would be to vote on this in one night, yes.
Together, okay, thank you.
Vice President Ruggiero.
Thank you. Just back to the point on deviation from the document. There was quite a bit of debate and discussion and attempt to compromise on almost every single one of these. And this is the result of the committee. So if anyone here comes up with any new facts or thoughts or opinions, I'd be surprised because we discussed all of these for 6 months and this was the result. So this is an intentional document. I guess we do have the right to do whatever we wish in terms of amendments and motions and whatever have you, as the council president just mentioned. But this is what's in front of us. So I would just keep that in mind.
Thank you. Councilor Honan.
Yep. I'd like to just remind people that we as counselors We're elected to vote on recommendations coming out of any committee, including recommendations from the ORC. It's by no means our job to rubber stamp anything coming out of a committee, as some would have you think. Per the charter, we, the council, are to act on these recommendations. And to my knowledge, there have been no recommendations to change what the charter says in regard to rubber stamping whatever comes out of the ORC or any other committee. As Councilor DeMarco stated, there is a process, and we as elected officials should follow that process. And that's why we send it to R&O, Rules and Ordinance Committee. It's why we have public hearings, so that we might hear from the community and make our decisions and vote on the recommendations based on our research and feedback from the community. It's why we were elected. We have received a great deal of communication from the community already, both in meetings and in emails. It's our responsibility to take that communication into account when voting on those recommendations, and just want to make that clear.
Thank you, Councilor Honan.
Excuse me, could you ask the folks with the council if you could speak up a little louder, because there's no microphone and
Okay, I'm sorry.
it's getting very tight.
Yes, Dottie.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on any of the items? Councilor Munson.
Thank you, Council President. Has there ever been any soft referendum, any kind of tool in your past? If you don't mind, I'm addressing this partly to Town Manager Marino. Have you ever seen anyone actually able to get a soft poll or some type of ability to get a pulse of the town before an actual ballot goes out and making the expense of going forward with something?
Yes. This is a council form of government, but in an open town meeting form of government, they would bring forward what they call non-binding questions, and they'd put them on a ballot, usually in an annual election. And towns with town meeting, they do an annual election every May to vote new select board members and planning board members, et cetera, et cetera. And then they would include a ballot question. The select board or whoever at the time could bring forward a ballot question. It's a non-binding ballot question. Some of them, in that form of government, citizens could bring them forward as questions. They could get a petition together and want to bring, I believe the town should do, one question was, I believe the town should do an audit, a quarterly audit of all the books. This person was a numbers person and wanted full transparency. Obviously, that didn't go anywhere, but, those are the kind of questions. They're non-binding ballot, questions, and, yeah, of course you could do that.
And now, in this situation, the only thing that I would wonder is if it was, whatever it was, question one, and we just voted to put it to a non-binding question on question one, exactly as written, where that would have to go to the state, can it bypass the state for non-binding?
You'd have to do it twice. You'd have to, you're doing your non-binding. But, I mean, if you're going to ask, you might as well just ask, I guess, I mean, if you're just going to ask to see whether to put it on the ballot, I would just say put it on the ballot and see, come out of it comfortable with the recommendation and see what the, what the residents think.
The good thing about this is eventually, when this gets voted on and passed, we're going to have a good 9 months to educate the community on every question. So it shouldn't be a situation where somebody's kind of blindsided and said, oh, I didn't understand what that meant. There will be ample time, and even once we vote and pass, I mean, there'll still be educational sessions to educate the public on any proposed changes. There could be none, there could be 22, or whatever the number is.
Mr. Council President, sir, if I could, on those ballot questions too, I will say, like, where I wouldn't recommend it here, where they do come in handy, and where I've seen them successful is, you've got 2 sites that you want to build a new elementary school, or 2 sites you want to build a public safety building. They would do non-binding questions there to kind of get a feel of the community to see where they want to be. So that's where you can, those are usually successful.
And again, even though it's another meeting, and we've mentioned it before, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the Ordinance Review Committee and their chair, Mark Chapdelaine, is here tonight. I would be remiss if I did not thank all of them for their help. It's greatly appreciated. Other discussion items. Well, there will definitely be another public hearing. It will tentatively be December 6th, and it will hopefully be at the high school, and we would be able to have Zoom participation. If the attendance we think is going to be not exactly what we thought, we could always just have it, and I would leave it up to the council. We could have it at the Harvey Room, and, take a chance that the attendance would be, manageable. So I would leave that up to the council, but the plan would be December 6th to have another public hearing on this matter. And again, a vote sometime mid to late January. And we will close that public hearing. Public comment. And again, anybody having public comment, I would ask to come up to the microphone, state your name and precinct. Got it? Yes. Or we could bring the microphone to you.
I would ask you to do one thing.
And again, just state your name, Dottie, for the record.
I'm sorry, Dottie. I don't even think it's working. Thank you.
No, that's for the CAT, that's not
for
for...
the TV.
Thank you, Annie. Dottie D'Onofrio, Precinct 4. First and foremost, on this very important matter, I want you to remember one thing. VV, the voice and the vote. The public went before and listened to your candidacy, each and every one of you, and had a belief in each and every one of you, and placed that belief in the ballot box. So when you talk about change, and you look at this small, beautiful little town with the multiple problems that she hosts, the airport, air pollution, noise, extended runways, 25 now listed flights daily on different airlines, not just the number of American or whatever. You have the MWRA, the traffic, the volume, the legalities around ticketing or non-ticketing, okay? And we're waiting for a catastrophe at the corner. You have a new issue before you, the MBTA. And they're changing or talking about, based on somebody else's rules, of making a change in the town of Winthrop for pickup and/or stops, which affects the point. Okay, which always seems to get affected for everything. This town has beaches. She has wonderful offerings. She has a center town business that's flourishing back and coming back. There is so much that each and every one of you, and the nicest part about it is, if I have an issue in Precinct 4, I know I can contact Barbara. And I can talk with Barbara and ask her if she would look into something, an issue, or would she enlighten me on an issue? So as far as talking about changing your size, you took away town meeting. That was a general vote, and that was the general voice of the community. And that became your responsibility as a council. And each and every one of you serve on minor boards and commissions, keeping aware of what's taking place. So I would ask you to continue to consider, when you're looking at changes in the charter, if it involves the council numbers, think about VV, the people.
Thank you, Dottie. And I will say, we will be, in the town manager's report, we will be talking about the MBTA and their proposed changes and our thoughts on those as well.
Rumor has it that they've pretty much made up their mind. And you want to know the rumor why? And this is a legitimate, positive rumor. The town isn't strong enough to fight back. That's why I've come out of my little cocoon, and I'm down here to pick and choose and pick on you guys.
Another public.
We need all of you. We need each and every one of you, and we need you stronger than ever, because Winthrop is up on that target board now, even more so.
Yes.
There we go.
Todd Sacco, Precinct 2. I just want to dovetail off Steve Ruggiero's comments. I'm not sure what you meant by a voted on solid document. I'm sorry, I lost the words, but I will say several of us have had conversations post-submission I've spoken to John. I've met with Mrs. Flockhart. We've had really good conversations, and if there's any concerns about raising these bars, we're not opposed to it. Where we just want the people, we want your input, but we want the people to decide on the basic framework of what we've put together. That is all. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Yes.
Hey, everybody. John DeRoss, Precinct 6. Always like to do that. Call out my guy. Two things. First of all, earlier, the lieutenant.
Lieutenant Fossey.
Thank you to the council. And I got up and thanked him personally, and Terry as well. Really appreciate the follow-through on that, so thank you. With regards to the OCR recommendations, when you guys have that next public hearing you're talking about on December 6th, is there an intention to have folks talk about what they see as the benefits and possible pros and cons? Maybe if someone can speak to, I know it's a long list of recommendations, so time may be a restraint, but especially for the ones that you guys are obviously seeing the most feedback on, which is around the changing of the structure of the council itself. Maybe it might be worthwhile to have folks just kind of get up and say, here's what we see as the potential pros of that and why we're making those recommendations. Here we see as a potential cons, just to kind of further inform the public. I'll be the first to say I have not done my homework like I probably should have at this point. So any help that you guys can provide around that would probably be good and help us make an informed decision. Just in quick homework, just looking around the surrounding towns, and you guys can educate us all on this, it seems as though that most town council and city council structures seem to have the structure that we have today, which is a mix of at-large representatives as well as district representatives. So to make a recommendation, as I understand it, the recommendation is to have all at-large representatives, correct? Might be worth it, especially on that point, for us to understand what's the hoped for outcome if that change is made, and what's the potential downside if that change is made. So, thank you.
Thank you. Very good comments. Any other public comment? All right, we will close public comment. Denise, any correspondence? Anyone else? Councilor Fusillo.
I've received multiple correspondences from people in my precinct around surrounding any communication with the MassDOT or MBTA around any sort of mediation surrounding the tunnel and stuff like that. I don't know if there's anything, like, if we've ever reached out.
Surrounding the tunnel or the TIP project?
No, the tunnel especially, like the tunnel closures and how it affects us. Like I talk with the...
No more than we've already discussed. They're still shutting down every weekend. And then in May of 2023, they'll close it, until September for that, permanently Monday through Friday and, all, through the weekend. So we're working, we've got the additional funds to help with the ferry.
Okay.
And we're working on that to keep, increase, to get it running on the weekends. Still working on that, but we hope to have that up and running by the spring. But other than that, there hasn't been any other mitigation discussion that I'm aware of anyway.
Thanks.
Any other correspondence that Councilor DeMarco?
So I got one correspondence asking about the rise in heating costs going into effect, which I believe started last night. National Grid had stated that it was going to be 64%. Unfortunately, when I did a little homework, you're all going to have sticker shock. It's probably about 200%. Okay, so I forget, I think it's kilowatt. It went from 11 cents to 30-something cents. So it was not 64% as advertised by National Grid. So I just wanted to make you all aware of that.
Is this on correspondence?
Yes, it is.
Yes, Councilor.
I did get several requests regarding the TIPS project to see if there was any updates. And you coincidentally just responded to an email with the same request. And so I went ahead and responded that we would get notified by the MBTA in the second meeting of November. Not MBTA, but my MassDOT, yeah. The second meeting in November, we would be updated based on Steve going to them and asking for updates?
That was my understanding, that we would have some sort of, I will ask the town manager. Will we have some sort of update? This was correspondence that was received by Councilor Munson. Updates from MassDOT on the TIP project.
Yes,
by
we
the
have
second meeting in
we have a Zoom call.
November.
It was going to be my town manager report, but I can do it now. We have a meeting with Friday, a Zoom meeting with them, with MassDOT on Friday, and we'll have they have all the questions that were asked of the council, and we'll get all the answers to that. And then we'll update the council on the meeting on November 15th.
So when you have that discussion, are you going to basically ask if they will shut the project down if we don't allow for bike lanes or on Revere Street? How is it going to be presented? I guess I'm curious.
Well, we said at the last council meeting, the question was never asked is, are we mandatory to have bike lanes? Is it an option not to have bike lanes?
Right.
Not that we don't want to do the work and we don't want to do the project, we just want to find out if is it Mass DOT requirement because they're funding the project that we have to have it. Was the question we're asking.
Right,
We're not
okay.
throwing out any, the plan is not to put out any ultimatums. I mean, we're already appraising properties and looking for easements, so I mean, we're full steam ahead on the project and
Right.
checking all the boxes that we have to, so,
Okay.
all right.
All right, now on to the committee reports. Finance.
Yeah, so Finance met before this meeting. We discussed those two items that were up for the public hearing, both of which were discussed, and then both were passed with a unanimous positive recommendation.
All right, and we heard that in public hearing, and we will hear it again in old business. Town managers report.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. First, I just wanted to, we do have, I spoke about before, we were able to schedule a shred day on November 17th, so thank you to Denise for finalizing that and getting that rolling. We will, Denise, remind me on the hours, I know it's going to be in the parking lot.
It's going to be 9 to 12.
We'll have him speak.
Okay.
I'll have him speak.
Yeah, on the November 17th in the morning from the hours of 9 a.m. to 12 noon. The truck will be in the parking lot, so any resident that wants to come by and drop off any shred that they have, they can do that at Town Hall parking lot. And also we'll have, at the same time, Town Hall will be closed for those hours as staff takes out all the necessary documentation that we can get rid of and shred it and sort of clean out the fire load we have at Town Hall. So we'll get rid of that, and it hasn't been done in a while, so we're trying to make this an annual thing. But if anybody's got any documents, confidential documents they want to bring and get shredded, they can, bring those to Town Hall on the 17th from 9 to noon.
And that's only loose paper?
Yep, loose paper,
No
whatever you
binders, no
have.
books, no?
No, yeah, no books, like loose paper documentation, IRS stuff, things like that, things you don't want to just throw in the trash and you want to have shredded, so. Tree lighting update, there's the tree lighting ceremony is planned and ready for day after Thanksgiving, for that Friday night. I believe the hours are going to be from 4 to 7. More to follow. It's being hosted by the Chamber. Town's participation is we're getting a 20-foot artificial tree. And thank you to Steve Caller. He's going to be taking care of putting that in French Square and tethering it down. The tree's coming lit, so we'll be ready to roll. So that's scheduled. We're excited about that. As stated to the Council President earlier, we will have in accordance with the charter, we'll have a revenue update for FY24 at the next council meeting, which I'll be attending via Zoom, but I will get all the documentation out to the council. I had the pleasure of attending 3 different events over the last couple of weeks as everyone knows, Sergeant Nick Pitano has been recognized not only at the national level, as recently went down to D.C. for that event, but he was also recognized locally by the Mass Policemen's Association in Plymouth a few weeks ago. This past Saturday night by the Association of Italian American Police Officers at a dinner that they had. And then today, we went out to Worcester and we went to the annual Hannah Awards, which was presented by the Governor Baker, and Sergeant Nicotano got an award there. So we'll do something here locally, but I just wanted to, it's a proud moment for Winthrop, and, David Green's brother, Ray, was there, so he could receive the award for him. So it was very good. They did a great job today with the event, so it was nice. The last one for, Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito and Governor Baker, but they did a great job, and, it was a good day to be representing Winthrop for sure, so I just wanted to let everybody know that. I did already comment on, we attended some School Dude Brightly training with Steve and Caller and Rich Safuni. That was great training, we enjoyed that, so we're excited about getting the vote and getting going with this program. The other thing is, I know there was some correspondence and questions with regard to zoning, brought up about some changes that were brought forward back in, I believe, 2018. I think Donna Riley sent in an email about that. I did get an update on that, and I was pretty sure I knew the answer to this, but I wanted to confirm it. You know, Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5 provides the guidelines to change your zoning bylaws. When presented with those changes in 2018, the council would have then had 90 days to act on it. Obviously, nothing happened then, and then honestly, when those changes were brought forward, they were asking to repeal changes that were made in 2014. You can't repeal the changes that were made, you can amend them. So those amendments. So what we'll have to do, and we actually have a few zoning changes to look at, you know, the MBTA zoning requirement where the housing we have to make some changes for that. You know, we can take a look at the proposed changes in 2018, see if the council wants to move those forward. And then also, you know, we talked about potentially putting some restrictions for affordable housing, you know, as new projects come forward, to put an affordable housing component in our zoning bylaw. So if developers choose not to build affordable housing units, they have to, you know, pay into a fund. Instead of, you know, creating the 10% affordable units, they can pay into a fund. So all those zoning changes we want to look at, so I think we probably my recommendation would be to do those as a whole and, you know, do it over the upcoming spring months and, you know, get the zoning changes moving forward. So that's the answer to those questions and why, you know, what happened in 2018 wasn't dealt with, so. Solid waste update, I want to thank the, you know, Councilor Honan and Vice President Ruggiero for surprising the draft. I'm going through that, and I'm also working with Director Calla and Wendy, our solid waste director, with regard to pricing. We all know that the fees are going to be the same for this year, but we also want to see, you know, what's the bag fees going to be, you know, the option of buying an additional barrel and what that cost will be based on, you know, potential bag usage, things like that. For families that, you know, don't want to have to buy bags every week, they have the option to buy an extra barrel. Strategically, that would more than likely be higher price than the 160 because you could put more bags per year. So we're working out those numbers, and we'll have a draft of the policy along with, you know, a fee structure, you know, to present, you know, back to Vice President Ruggiero's committee and, you know, the council ultimately. So, and also on some good news, I wanted to announce we'll be putting out a press release. Meredith Hurley received a grant through the Winthrop Health Department of $571,932 over the next 3 years to address youth mental health in Winthrop. They're going to use that money to hire a youth social worker and, you know, propose, you know, have other programs they're going to bring forward, but that money will be allocated over the next 3 years. So, you know, kudos to them and more great work coming out of that department. And MBTA, everybody received the updated, you know, revised bus schedule. They obviously didn't make any changes that we requested per our letter. There is another meeting tomorrow, you know, a Zoom meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. With regard to the changes, and, you know, I'll certainly look to the council for some input because I know there's been some conversations with, you know, potentially people we could reach out to, but that's where we stand on that. And I think they're looking for more, you know, additional comments at this point, so. And that's all I have, and I'm certainly open to questions.
And I will say on the tree lighting, sponsored by the Chamber, and I believe it's co-sponsored by Viking Pride this year also, who will be participating.
I believe so, yeah. I've been waiting for the final on that.
And are there questions for the town mayor, Councilor Aiello?
Just something I didn't catch because of the acoustics, so relevant to Donna Riley's email on zoning. Thank you for following up, and I agree to that your approach of comprehensively dealing with a bunch of interrelated zoning items, but I didn't catch your sense of timing on it. When do you think we're going to be in a position?
Oh, I have to take a look at what was brought forward in 2018. I haven't had a chance to look at what they were proposing to do in 2018. We certainly the council already adopted the new CBD map, so that was done, but any sort of changes to the actual zoning language, I want to see what the proposed changes were. I've been working, obviously, with Rachel on the MBTA zoning, so, you know, we need to have that so we can, one, deal with the issues and then not lose any sort of credibility we'll have in, you know, with applying for grants, you know, because if we don't take care of the MBTA housing zoning, we'll lose standing when we apply for grants, you know, and all the grant money we get, we don't want to do that. And then lastly is, you know, I want to be able to take a look at the zoning bylaws and come up with, you know, housing, you know, affordable housing language that works for the town. So I want to be able to talk about that with the council. So I think we'll probably try to bring something forward in the January, February timeframe.
Okay.
With, and then move it forward from there.
Yeah, I was just trying to get a sense of timing, so that's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vice President Ruggiero?
Thank you, Council President. How are we doing as far as staffing goes? It's something that we haven't talked about in a while. Is your office fully staffed up, or we still have open positions that we're looking for?
No, we're okay. Well, as I said before, we introduced Brendan. We have a, you know, new treasurer collector, new assistant treasurer collector. VSO's filled. We're using a consultant for assessing right now, so we're okay there with Patrick Herring. The one we don't have filled yet, and we talked about that at the last meeting, is we're doing a combined position with the schools. I'm actually meeting with John Petrin from Community Paradigm tomorrow.
Okay.
So we'll be reviewing the job description and the posting with Lisa Howard, and then we'll get that out tomorrow. So I'm hoping by, if all goes well, January timeframe, we'll have somebody starting.
Okay, so the combined position with the schools, can you just remind us again, is that the CFO position and the school business manager position?
It's going to be a CFO for the town and school, because, the school has that business manager position filled right now, so this will be somebody over that position.
Got it, okay.
So the pecking order will be the town school CFO, and then, Robbie Powers is our assistant CFO, and then Noel is the school business manager, and then the dual report to the, school superintendent and myself.
Okay, cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
Council Flockhart.
Town manager, I met with the Housing Authority this week and was surprised to learn that they had not been given any kind of notice about how the TIPS project was going to be affecting them, and it's going to be affecting them quite a bit. There's going to be taking of property there and moving of bus stops, and, is there a reason why they weren't notified?
Well, if they need easements on their property, they're being notified of that now, but I wasn't here back in, when they had the public hearings the last 2 or 3 years, but if they, certainly as part of the abutter notification, I'm sure they got that, so I'm not sure that they didn't get notified, but I can certainly reach out to Peg Lyons and find out why, but yeah, that's, it's been going on for 3 years, so I find it, it shouldn't, I'm not sure that they wouldn't have been notified.
The right-of-way information just came to the town, just this year. It wasn't something that, when the project's designed, the easement requirements come at the end. That's where they determine the limits of the project. So if it wasn't, I'm sure Peg, she's sitting right here, knew about the project on Revere Street for many, many years now, this project didn't talk. The right-of-way request and the easement request wouldn't have been shared with her if we didn't have that information. Those right-of-ways don't get submitted until 100% design submittal of the project.
I understand that we're going to have some problems there because that's not Winthrop town property, that's state property, or under state control in some way, and there can't be an easement.
Certainly declined, and we'd have to go back to the state and if it was required. And again, I don't even know what the easement requests are. I think there's one temporary, one permanent. You can absolutely speak. So, those will get resolved, and no one's saying that they have to accept it.
My understanding, too, is if the temporary one is on property that there's a fence in between, if they don't take the fence down, they're never going to use the property anyway, right?
That's right. The state's requirements above and beyond normal requirements. Because the state-funded project, all of these easement requirements come into play. We do infrastructure work all over town. And town doesn't go out and get temporary easements. It's just not the procedure that's undertaken. When the state's putting the bill, they have a different approach to things, and they don't want projects to be held up because somebody doesn't want somebody temporarily, stepping on their property while they're setting a form or something to that effect.
We're fortunate to have Peg Lyons from the Housing Authority here, so if Peg wants to address that question, that would be great.
Hi, thank you. I'm Peg Lyons. I work at the Housing Authority. And number one, I'm really excited that the town has gotten this far in taking some steps to alleviate some mutual problems with the traffic and some of these. And we were notified on October 17th when we received a letter from the appraiser. And that was the first time the Housing Authority was notified that there would be any involvement of housing state property regarding this project. I have forwarded the information we've obtained since then to the Department of Housing and Community Development. We'll have some input as to what to do with the easements. I think the only issue that has to do with the bike lanes, and we want to work with the town, and I can't speak on behalf of the board, but it's my take in trying to gather information at this point. Yes, I was familiar with the TIPS project. I didn't know what it entailed. I didn't know the details would involve easements. I've asked the state whether or not we can waive any payment to the housing authority if in fact there's a way to work out the devil's in the details, and we're concerned about the widths of the sidewalk that abuts our developments, our mutual developments. We're all like one community. It's not like, we're more than, we're all one community sharing space and trying to solve a mutual problem. I think part of the problem was I've gone over the blueprints, and I'm the grants writer for the Housing Authority. I've been somewhat successful at that. I know how to read the prints. I think there's a lot of solutions in this project. Steve Keller has been very helpful in answering questions. It's not easy talking to me sometimes because the words come out of my mouth, and I appreciate Barbara coming down and answering some questions. I think that we've got a little bit of time. It's my understanding on the information we received, 30 days has to be counted down before the board would make a decision on what to accept and not to accept. I suspect by the end of next week, I'll have some feedback from the engineers and the Office of the General Counsel, which I talked to, as to whether or not the state would allow us to give an easement. The temporary easement I don't think is going to be the issue, because, we're working with people that stand on the property every day, and we're mutually beneficial. It just hit us out all of a sudden, and we've got the 30 days to do an investigation. I've been tasked with getting information on how it would permanently affect us, as to whether or not the board can, as a body, approve any questions that are posed on the easements, and the state, I think, needs to sign off on it. If the design of the project isn't finalized and there is some wiggle room on what to do with the bike lanes and the narrowing of the sidewalks. The sidewalks from Golden Drive down to Governor's Park now range between the housing fence and the street between 10 feet and 14 feet. I understand they're going to widen the concrete pieces from the fence line out 8 feet at the 3 new bus stop locations. I'm rather in favor of the new bus stop locations. Since being employed at the Housing Authority in 2004, we've had 4 residents hit by cars as they come around the corner, 3 of whom died. And then there was a former tenant that had died crossing the street as well. So I'm not in favor of having 25 to 30 mile an hour traffic going by a thinner pathway, by people that are sight impaired and in wheelchairs and walkers, and the kids that cut through the property. But once the details get worked out, we want to collaborate, because I suspect people will be cutting through and using Overlook Drive as a pedestrian, egress to go to the school while all the construction's being, and I had to get to the beginning of the project before we could get to the end, and that is getting authorization from DHCD on as to what we have the authority to do. I'm going to do this within 30 days because the eminent domain laws require, at this point of being served, that we have to make a decision and pose questions, and we have submitted a list of questions, which I trust we'll get the answers to in time.
Thank you, Peg. And a couple of things for the town manager also, and as a council, I think we could speak for us all that we're so incredibly proud of Sergeant Patano for his actions last year, and very much look forward to, now that this is behind us, behind Sergeant and investigations and everything, that we have that opportunity to publicly thank him and acknowledge him, and just so well deserving. And also, if this has been irking me for a little bit, I see so many now, and I don't know what the rules are or not, but electric scooters everywhere. And they're coming out around corners, they don't have helmets, I don't know what the rules, the regulations, if there are any, or can we impose any, but it's dangerous. There's a danger there. So I would ask.
Yeah, I'll find out, and I know they use them all over the country, so I'll find out what the rules are, what we can do locally. So
right.
I'll find out. All right.
And they're loud.
Mr. President.
Councilor Aiello, I'm sorry.
I forgot. Tony, just a couple of notes on the ferry. First of all, it's been a great season, so really appreciate it. But, towards the end of the year, there were a couple of maintenance and
Minor stuff we've got worked on.
other issues with the boat. The boat's getting older. Next year is going to be a very, very intensive use of that boat. And I think in the state grant we got this year was sized to give us an allocation for off-season rehabilitation and all that kind of stuff. I'm not 100% sure. But whether that's adequate or not adequate, we ought to make sure we have an adequate budget. If we need to ask the DOT for it, we should do that ask now.
Yep.
Because I think this winter's off-season rehabilitation, get-ready thing ought to be as deep a dive as we can, because that ferry's going to have no time off next year, given the tunnel stuff, so.
Yeah, we've had similar conversations with Jack down there, so yeah, we're ramping up and getting ready for that.
Okay, yeah, and I think the DOT would look favorably. They're still understanding they need to worry about mitigation, so there's an opportunity to gain money if we don't have adequate dollars there.
And if we can't get the MBTA to supply a backup ferry, I want to try to have MMOA with somebody, so when it does go down, we can have a backup ferry, so we don't have to have lost days.
Yeah, that's right, and when we talk about the MBTA, we can cover more of this in detail there. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. There is no school department report. We have not had a meeting. We're meeting Monday night, so that will be there for the next meeting. And I'll ask the council's indulgence and approval. I've noticed that former council president, also former charter commission, former selectman, we could go on and on and on. But Mr. Riley has come to the meeting and taken time out of his night. I would like to, with the permission of the council, let Mr. Riley speak on the Ordinance Review Committee recommendations.
Aye.
Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Riley. We're fortunate to have two former presidents here tonight, with Mr. Gill also in the audience, so acknowledge.
I'm well into my recovery for some major surgery on my leg, so I'll try to stand here for as long as I can, but it might be necessary to sit down. I don't think the mic I can take it out of here, so I'll stay here till till necessary, and maybe I can finish up by then. I did want to talk about and I had thought, I was confused about the start of the meeting, and I would have been here earlier for the time when this was legitimate, appropriately on the agenda. Thank you, Mr. Council President. Oh, okay. Thank you. And the council. As Jim mentioned, I was the vice chair of the Charter Commission, and we spent an awful lot of time putting things together. And I had some reactions to the report, and not so negative. The first one would be the election of councilors at large. Now, we spent an awful lot of time examining the pros and cons of elections of people at large. And I will tell you, there are some very good arguments for electing people at large. We discussed them all, we talked about them, we reviewed them, we listened to our consultant talk about different publications on municipal government and how people had different theories about it. One of the things I found is it's impossible to speak for the Charter Commission itself. There were 9 very strong-willed individuals there who had different motivations for different things. So I can't say these are the reasons why the Charter Commission voted for a certain thing. But one of the concerns that was expressed in all the meetings were that we were replacing a legislative body that was elected by precinct, and that was what people were used to, and that we would do that. So, and in setting it up and looking at how it's worked over the years, one of the advantages of having done it that way and having the at-large councilors overlap is that no one who gets on the council is sitting next to their opponent from the last election or in the next election. And I think that has a positive effect in the ability of groups to function. I don't like to do this because it reinforces how old I am, but I worked at my father's drugstore across the street from the town hall all through the 60s and when I was in high school and college. And Soda Fountain was the place where everybody from town hall came and gathered and spoke and so forth. At that time, selectmen were elected to 1-year terms. And so they were each other's opponents. And there were an awful lot, and it kind of, I didn't really like it, hearing it as a kid, but there were an awful lot of disparaging comments made by one person or their friends about other selectmen and so forth. The town went to a 3-year term, overlapping terms, and when I got to be selectman in 1975, the other two people were never going to be running against me. I mean, so there is that positive that gets in there. I think the election of councilors by precinct does make it easier for people to get on the council without having to run statewide. Now, that doesn't, and I want to give credit to the committee that put the report together. They did a great job, and they've got some really, the idea of having such a committee is that every 5 years we take a look at what we're doing and how we do it and whether or not we can make things better. And there are legitimate arguments, and I'm certain they will have made them to you, and I don't want to discount them, of electing people at large. But I just thought there were a couple of things that it might be worth considering when you were making the decision. Along with that, I also think it might be a good idea to have a meeting with the members of the Charter Commission and have a dialogue. It really doesn't lend itself to a public hearing or an approach, but a combined meeting where people could discuss things back and forth. Maybe people's thinking over time has evolved and changed from what they were thinking at the time, based on what the experience has been, what people have witnessed, what people have seen as the functioning. Don't forget, we did this in the not in the abstract, but without any basis of experience. We were putting up what we thought could happen, and now we're talking about what has happened. So we're in a very different point right now. One of the other aspects on there, and this is one where my thinking has changed somewhat over the years. I was probably the most outspoken person against recall elections, going back to a special election back in the late 80s. I thought that they were divisive, they were politics of revenge. They only worked for the advantage of vested interest groups who could place the question on the ballot. It made it difficult to take an unpopular vote because because that could render a thing, and the divisiveness of it. We all get into races. I've been with winners and with losers, people get over it, and they expect that. A recall election which removes somebody mid-term is a little bit different. But it's a little change in it. I have gotten more concerned about what I see as this radicalization of government and politics around different issues, and if someone was to get on, run as unopposed for an office, or get into office, that espouse some of these horrible things that we're hearing of: anti-Semitic, white nationalists, hatred, denying elections, applauding the assault of the speaker's husband, and that kind of thing. If somebody with that type of, and I think this is, I don't think I would have thought that it was a threat years ago when I was in office. I don't think it would have been the last thing on my mind that something like this could ever occur. But it might be a concern. So I think there's a balance. I think when you take a look at it, there's pros and cons of the recall election, and it's not just if someone's no good, we want to get rid of them. It's more complicated than that. I would make it difficult for it to happen, but it might be something that I wouldn't be quite as opposed to it as I have been in the past, although I still don't like the idea. I still have a basic dislike for the idea. The use variances by the Board of Appeals, I would urge you to get rid of that at your earliest possible time. I don't think our zoning laws ought to be able to be superseded by a variance. I think if we want a different type of development, if we want different types of structures, we want something to change, there's a public process, there's a legal process that goes through there where everybody gets a chance to be heard, and the proper legislative body makes that decision. So I think that that was a very good idea by the committee. Again, I think the committee did you a favor. They did an awful lot of things, but there are things now the council now has to weigh in. It's your turn to take a look at these and weigh out with it there. If you were to decide the at-large election was a good idea, however, I'd suggest that rather than have the whole council run against each other every 2 years, you have overlapping terms and elect half the council in one cycle and half the council in another. There's continuity. I think I think it would be a better way than all for one every couple of years, and I still think a 2-year term is kind of short for anybody to get into office and try to have to come by and go campaign again. You're into your first year, you've learned the budget, you've figured out how things operate, and then you're off running again for re-election. Again, on that regard, I think the 4-year term for a council president, and I think that needs to be discussed at length because there's an awful lot of thought to it, but I think it's a good idea. I know that running for re-election in my second year was, and trying to be council president at the same time. Fortunately, I was retired at the time, so I could do both. But I think somebody working who was trying to fulfill the job and do it in a conscientious fashion, and also try to run a campaign simultaneously it's difficult. I think after 4 years, it would be appropriate for that kind of a term. We did think that the council president being the focal point, the person with an awful lot of responsibility. I won't say authority, but an awful lot of responsibility. The authority rests with the town manager, by and large, but the council president does have an awful lot of responsibility. That having that person run every 2 years, also having that office on the ballot at every town election would help with participation and encourage turnout and so forth. Those were some of the thoughts we had at the time, but all that being considered and so forth, I think that the overall with weighing everything out and the pros and cons, I'd come down on the side of the 4-year term. So thank you, Mr. Marino, for helping me out
Before you
with
leave, Tom, I have one question. This is, since I have you here, and I'm going to use your expertise, because you had talked to me about this before, and you gave a good reason why, because recommendation number 7, which to me just seems like a no-brainer, it should be done, but I think I had talked to you about this before, and you told me why it shouldn't be done. Should the filling of vacancy language of school committee and housing authority. So we've had situations in the past. We've had a member, let's just say a member of the housing authority vacated, and now you had, say 4 housing authority members there, and they vote, we like candidate A because whatever. And now there's 9 councilors that say, we want candidate B or whatever. So now the council is really picking the member instead of the housing authority, and the same on the school committee if that happened. The council has the numbers so they can theoretically select these positions, and so it seems like shouldn't the boards themselves be selecting their members? But I thought you had said something to me about this before.
I think, and I think you should check this because an awful lot of stuff has changed since I was dealing with it in the past, is that the state law covers the filling of municipal vacancies and sets the procedure, which I think involves the council or the board of selectmen in a town form of government and the remaining body, and that there's a combined meeting. I believe that that's covered by state law, but I would not rely on my memory to do that. I would check it, but I think but I believe that's the case.
And I just wanted to make sure procedurally if we're even allowed to, because on the surface it seems like, to me, shouldn't the school committee pick their own member? Shouldn't the housing authority pick their own member? So it seems like, a no-brainer, but I just want to make sure that there's no statutory reason that we shouldn't be able to do this.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would check.
For the president, as you pointed out, shouldn't the school committee and shouldn't the housing authority, but shouldn't one of the council members serve as a delegate to that board so that they're constantly bringing back the current?
Well, they are on the school,
activity?
when we did the charter way back, that was the main focal point of the charter, was to connect the schools in the town permanently, and we did that by having the council president sit on the school committee board. The housing authority is set by statute also as to who should be on it and who can't, so I can't just appoint myself or Councilor DeMarco or anybody else to the housing authority. So we don't have the ability to do that. And I'm sorry, I don't want to, this isn't where we are in the agenda. We've had, and we're going to have another public comment period. I just wanted to give the council president.
I think that where we have a strong council, that each and every one of our council members have something to bring to the table when they go to these subcommittees or these appointed commissions or the boards, so that there's that constant flow of communication. And they don't always have to wait to sit in a body for a meeting that you can share or he can share, and with each other back and forth, so that it kind of creates a unity.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Riley, since we are lucky enough to have him here? All right, thank you, Tom. And I'm sure, and that is a very good suggestion. I have talked about it with Denise too, about having the Charter Commission members that are able to come to have a meeting with us.
And again, I do want to commend the committee. I think that committee did a very good job and has placed an awful lot of thought-provoking ideas in front of you. And I think that even though I'm not in total agreement with them, I do want to say that I think they've done well for the town.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Mr. Riley.
Tom,
We will
best
now-
to the family.
We will now move on to old business. Trash Enterprise Fund, trash abatement, trash enforcement, as said to us by the town manager earlier, it will remain on the agenda, and hopefully by the, I think, next council meeting, we will have some sort of document from the town manager. Ordinance Review Committee recommendations, I think we've kind of gone through that ample times this evening. Solid Waste Enterprise Fund Amendment, Councilor for Fusillo.
Yes, so, as mentioned before, this is just some like accounting stuff, moving some money around where, if you wouldn't mind, going over that again, what was it, moving it, it's just changing the accounting line.
Yeah, we had accounted for retained earnings and the revenue, which haven't been certified yet, so we couldn't do that, so we just needed to drop the budget by 100,000. Looking at the projections, I think we'll be fine with the budget as is with the, less 100K, but if not, we can always adjust it later in the fiscal year.
Perfect. And once again, that came out of committee with a positive, unanimous positive recommendation.
Okay, so in accordance with the charter of the town of Winthrop, it is moved that town council vote to amend the June 7th, 2022 vote approving the town manager's proposed solid waste fund budget for fiscal year 23 by decreasing the amount appropriated for operations and maintenance by 100,000 and reducing funding from retained earnings by 100,000 or take any other action relative thereto. This came out of committee with positive recommendation, does not require a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing that, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Council Honan?
Yes.
Council Fusillo?
Yes.
Council Munson?
Yes.
Council Belcher?
Yes.
Council DeMarco?
Yes.
Council Flacco?
Yes.
Council Aiello?
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero?
Yes.
President Lettieri?
Yes, that is passed. Town council vote to transfer $247,775 water main master plan and long-term capital improvement plan. That is continued to the next meeting. Town council vote to transfer $101,786.04 from school dude facilities needs assessment for town and school buildings. Councilor Fusillo.
Yes, so the motion reads, I move that the town council vote to amend, to appropriate $101,786.04 from the building maintenance stabilization fund to a new special article line to pay for facilities needs assessment for town and school buildings to be performed by Brightly/School Dude or take any other action thereto. So after after this motion, this building maintenance stabilization fund would stand at $124,116.27. Once again, came out of committee with a unanimous positive recommendation.
This came out of committee with positive recommendation. Any discussion on the motion? And just to let everybody know, that Council Fusillo stated that after this motion, the balance of the building maintenance stabilization fund will be $124,000 and change. Once free cash is certified, there is a financial strategy that's been instituted by the council several years back, which will probably bring this fund back up to the $300,000 that we hope to keep it at. No discussion. Please ask for a roll call vote.
Council Honan?
Yes.
Council Fusillo?
Yes.
Council Munson?
Yes.
Council Belcher?
Yes.
Council DeMarco?
Yes.
Council Flockhart?
Yes.
Council Aiello?
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero?
Yes.
President Lettieri?
Yes, that is passed. We will now continue our discussion on the committee handbook, which we started a few meetings back, discussed it again last meeting, and I'm hoping everybody had the opportunity to look through it if they have any questions on it. Councilor Belcher.
Thank you. I think that we need to take a careful look at this and see how it compares to how we do things in practice versus how they're written down. Is this something we could send to the committee on committees?
Sure, if you'd like to.
I'll make that motion.
Send to what committee?
Whatever committee you're chairperson of.
Yeah, you're the chairperson.
It's going to you, Bobs.
I just think there's a lot of things that need to be looked at closely and carefully and updated, because we want this to help people get involved and be comfortable as soon as they're appointed to a committee to hit the ground running, so.
I think that's a good idea,
Take a
Councilor
close look.
Belcher. Yeah.
And we have a recommendation for the committee to have it go to?
Committee for committees?
Yeah.
So where is it going to?
Public safety.
It's going to public safety? That makes no sense.
Definitely not rules and ordinance.
No, it's a committee for committees, commissions, and
Yeah. Yep.
several other.
Appointments going, okay.
Committee for.
All right, going to appointments.
All right, there's a motion by Councilor Belcher, second by Councilor DeMarco to move this onto the Committee on Committees. Any discussion on that? Council Vice President Ruggiero.
Before this goes anywhere, I'd just like to ask that the committee chairs receive a copy of this and maybe provide the council with some feedback in advance.
Yep.
This is the type of thing where, we can either dictate how we want things to be done, or we can have a good working relationship with the volunteers in the community and making sure that, everyone's on the same page with this thing, so. We took this up a couple of years ago. I don't think it's too far off from where I'd personally like to see it, but there are definitely some things that need updating. So, yeah.
When I was, I'm sorry, may I?
All right.
Yeah.
That's noted, Vice President Ruggiero, and we will ask Denise to do that. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. It's been moved to Committee on Committees. Committee appointments. I do have a couple of appointments this evening. The first is that the Town Council accept the appointment made by Council President Lettieri to appoint Bibiosi, or B. La Rochelle, to the Commission for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, or take any other action relative thereto. I was at a recent CDICR meeting, and B attended as a citizen, and her knowledge is incredible. She brought a couple ideas to the conversation that were just something that we didn't have the ability maybe to think about right away. She is the coordinator in the city of Malden for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I believe she will be a welcome asset to the committee. Is there a second for that? Second by Councilor Belcher. Any discussion on it? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. I'd also like the town council to accept the appointment made by Town Council President Lettieri to appoint Karen Chavez to the TSAC, Transportation Safety Advisory Committee, or take any other action relative thereto. I don't have to go into the incredible list of qualifications that Karen has, so I will ask for a second. Second by Councilor Munson. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Congratulations, Karen, on yet another assignment. Also have a motion that I had made last week that I'm going to throw the gavel down to the Vice President and ask that I be able to make a motion. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Okay, are there any motions coming to the council floor?
Yes, Council Vice President, I move that the Town Council vote to amend the Town Council Rules and Procedures, Rule Number 4, Order of Business, to include an agenda item of a report from the Commission on Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, CDICR, or take any other action relative thereto.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Council Fusillo. Is there any discussion?
This would be
Councilor Munson.
So my question is, would this be every meeting there would be a report by the CDICR?
If so, just as in, it would come under school department report, it would be number 11, everything else would go down, and like this evening, there was no school department report because there wasn't a meeting. If there was a meeting, there would be either a representative from the CDICR, there would be a council, there could be the town manager, and it would probably go through the town manager, who is a representative of the board, to make a statement as to what went on at their prior meetings.
Have we made has there been a delegation of the town council to be on the?
There's not been a delegation yet from the town council. There is a town manager, the chief of police, the fire chief, and there will be a member of the schools.
Right.
Councilor-
I'm very, very much in
Go
support.
ahead, sir.
I'm in support of.
Councilor Aiello?
Just a request that it would be helpful to get the organization to come and have a discussion with us about how they view their role and sort of what are the issues they are thinking about attacking over the next year, as an example, so we can get a comprehensive sense of sort of how they're thinking about their mandate more broadly. That would be helpful. Doesn't have to be the next meeting, but at some upcoming meeting would be helpful.
And I think that's true for all of our committees, right? Just having sort of periodic updates.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something we can look at in the handbook. We'll do the same. Any other counselors on this item? I do have one point. Do I have to repass the gavel?
Nope.
I just want to make sure this is something that the CDICR wants. I haven't communicated with them directly on it. You know, we don't require this of any of our other committees, so what I don't want this to be is oversight without resources, right? The reason why we have the school committee is because of the amount of financial support that obviously we are willing to do. We vote on the budget annually, but, you know, so there has to be that level of oversight, just from a financial perspective alone, as well as the fact that, you know, our schools are very important to us in many other ways. We don't have that necessarily right now with the CDICR, so I don't want this to be another burden on volunteers. And are we kind of putting a spotlight on a group that is still in its infancy? It's still a young group that wasn't organized all too long ago. So those are just sort of the things that I'm thinking about right now. I'm not sure, the town manager, I believe you sit on the committee. We took that vote earlier this year. Can you, or I don't want to put anyone on the spot here, but is this something that the committee might want?
I was at a recent meeting and brought this up. I mean, I didn't just bring this up to the council without going to the CDICR. And, you know, I think in some committees, they want that validity, and they're not getting the exposure. Not that they're not doing this for exposure, but they're not getting maybe the input that they could use, or the exposure that let the town see what they're doing, or what they might want them to do, or ask them. this, like the schools, the school committee has meetings every other week as we do, maybe doesn't get the attention or the audience that we get. And I think this is a way to share all the work that they're doing and to bring it to the forefront, to get the community to understand the work that they do. And if there's something that they think they would like to see them do that they haven't had the opportunity, it just gives them more validity to myself. And and it's not any extra work for them, it will come from the town manager.
That's what I just want to make sure,
Yes.
right? Because
Yeah, we're not asking them to come to every council meeting with a report.
Right. Yeah, and I mean.
Just kind of it's like minutes from a meeting from Rules and Ordinance. Instead of you reading them, the town manager will read minutes from the CDICR.
Sure, and as long as that group is okay with this, I think that's what's important. Okay. Any other counselors? Seeing no further discussion, I will ask the council clerk to take a roll call vote as it's update to council rules.
Counsel Honan.
Yes.
Counsel Fusillo.
Yes.
Counsel Munson.
Aye.
Counsel Belcher.
Yes.
Counsel DeMarco.
Yes.
Counsel Flockhart.
Yes.
Counsel Aiello.
Yes.
Vice President Ruggiero.
Yes.
President Lettieri.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Council Vice President. New business, we do not have any this evening. We are back to public comment, so we will reopen it for public comment. All right, we will close public comment. Public relations upcoming events, early voting continues in the town hall lobby through November 4th. Hours are posted on the website and also in the transcript. I do want to thank the PTOs from the Gorman Fort Banks and the Cummings schools for running the trunk or treat behind the Cummings School last Friday evening. I believe it was attended, I was there and it seemed like even more, but I believe there was close to 900 participants in that. It was a fantastic fundraiser for the PTOs, and the funds that were raised will go to families in need for the holidays, which will be donated by the PTO. So it was a great event by all. It was well attended. We thank the police and fire departments for their help, and it was a very good event. Do we have any other public relations? We'll start with Council Honan.
No.
Council Fusillo.
The Winthrop High School football team will be playing against Cardinal Spellman at Miller Field for their first playoff game. It's also on YouTube, anyone looking to watch. I hear they got a pretty good play-by-play commentator. So that's all. It'll be, I'm pretty sure it's 6:30 at Miller Field.
What day?
Friday.
Friday.
Okay.
Council Munson.
Thank you. The Odd Fellows is hosting a food drive on behalf of the Winthrop Food Pantry, and we will be collecting any donations Monday through Friday at the Odd Fellows Hall at 196 Winthrop Street all month, Monday through Friday, and they'll be culminating on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, November 26th, with the community lunch, which the veterans will be invited to.
Councilor Belcher.
There is an MBTA meeting tomorrow regarding the bus network redesign. It's at 6 p.m. on Zoom. I will ask that the town clerk post the information to Facebook and other mediums, but it's really important that we go to this. This is the last opportunity for public comment before the board votes on the network redesign. As it was mentioned earlier, they didn't really take our comments into consideration. Point Shirley is still cut off. The Governor's Park stop is still off the map. This is really, really important, so please attend if you're able.
Councilor DeMarco.
Just would like to echo what Councilor Fusillo said, although I would watch the game. If you're going to watch it on YouTube, I would do it with the volume off. So, God bless everybody. Thanks.
Councilor Aiello.
A couple of items. First of all, congratulations to Bike Winthrop, which had a really terrific turnout last Saturday. About a couple hundred people, over 100 kids and bikes. Councilor DeMarco was there in full Halloween outfit, so that was really, really terrific and quite scary to some of the children. But just a second note, just an acknowledgement from the council to Bob Carroll, who just recently stepped down from the planning board, for all the dedication he's given to the town to try to continue to improve planning and zoning and all those topics. Second last issue, Liam Neeson was on Cottage Hill today. Oh, by the way, I forgot we had a fabulous DJ at the Bike Winthrop thing. I'm sorry about that, even though he wouldn't play Sinatra, but that's okay. Liam Neeson was on Cottage Hill today, and as he was walking past me, he said, "Be certain to say hi to," a plane flew over. I swear he was saying Barbara Flockhart. I'm not 100% sure. And, I do have one more serious thing. The semi-serious thing, but real serious, Winthrop Art Association, Art Council is sponsoring a jazz festival this Saturday at 1:30 at the E.B. Newton School. Always a terrific event. And the last thing, Jim, I thought at one point you wanted to have a couple of moments to talk about the tea, or did you want to wait till next meeting, or?
No, I would
just have a couple
encourage
of
any
comments
comment you
on it.
have now, before the meeting.
My sense is we've got a transit authority that's in complete disarray. They're under the gun on safety and a whole bunch of other issues. The general manager just announced this afternoon that he was stepping down on January 3rd. They are short over 2,000 people, a lot of them bus drivers. They don't have enough buses. The advancement of this new bus redesign is a little bit off kilter, if you ask me. They don't have the buses or the drivers or the money to run any of this change service. I suspect there's going to be a big reset in January. I think not only do we have to do what the council has suggested, which is to weigh in now, but we have to have a real offensive with state representative, state senator, and the town again to sort of impact them as early in January and February as we can for next year. None of this is going to be implemented in the short term, but we do need to be impactful in the short term. It also includes the ferry mitigation, the potential for the T to take over the ferry and get it completely off our books, which would be great. So I would hope that in December or January, we come up with, again, a restatement of our strategy of how we want to engage the T, and then just really push hard in the first 3 months. There's time to do it. It's really outrageous what they've done, but it's part of the dysfunction of the agency. Not anybody's fault, but they're just under so much stress. Not all the decisions they're making are rational these days.
With some of their former employees retiring now, it's probably been a big burden for them.
It's just, it's really unbelievable, this arbitration ruling. So if you were in the system 23 years and out at any age, an arbitrator between management and the T ruled that it now has to align with the state pension system, which means that age is a factor, it never used to be. So there are people in the T who have 15, 18, 20 years of experience who are approaching 23 years who are going to find out when who are finding out when this new system goes into effect starting January 1st, they will lose effectively 5% of their retirement value per year for every year they continue to work. So if you think you're 4 years away from retirement, your retirement is going to be 20% less than it is if you just quit now. There are something like 500 letters of intent to retire dated December 31st for this year. It continues, and people have left. 270 have already left as a result, and there's another 500. The organization's in deep trouble.
Thank you. Councilor Flockhart.
Nothing.
Vice President Ruggiero.
Yeah, piggybacking off of some comments that Councilor DeMarco made earlier related to fuel, the cost of home heating. CAPIC is once again doing their fuel assistance program. So for those of you that aren't aware, CAPIC's a nonprofit in the area that serves Winthrop, Chelsea, and Revere. Every year, one of their programs each winter is to help with fuel assistance costs for those who are of financial need. The town usually shares the information on Facebook, and we usually blast it out on email and all of our other mediums. But in the meantime, You can call 617-884-6130 for more information, or go to capicinc.org, CAPICINC, capicinc.org. And a bunch of information's there. Also, I'm sure our town clerk could connect you with the folks there as well if you need assistance in that space, so.
Thank you, and I will say, again, we have 2 openings on the planning board. We are looking for people with the expertise that would help that, architects, engineers, lawyers, but we are looking for people with an expertise and a desire to serve. Please contact the council, Denise, or go to the website and fill out an application. Denise?
I should have put it on the agenda, we just wanted to report that the actual state election
Is Tuesday. A week from today, Tuesday, November 8th, will be the state election. It will be held in 2 locations in Winthrop. Precinct 4 will be voting out of the Winthrop Housing Authority down at Golden Drive. Precincts 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 will be voting from the old middle school. Hours are 7 to 8? 7 to 7? Yeah, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. We thank all our volunteers, as usual. So encourage people to vote, always. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilor DeMarco, second by Councilor Fusillo. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The meeting is adjourned.